Have you ever paused to really think about your phone or maybe your AI assistant, that new medical tech, not just as a handy tool, but as something that's actually deeply changing who you are? I mean, we're talking fundamental changes here. Today, we're doing a deep dive into this really insightful study. It's from the journal Al-Istighrab by a French researcher and physician, Mark Grassin. The work's called Ethical Tech: Totalitarianism, Metaphysics, and the Human Condition. And wow, it offers a powerful, maybe even radical new way to look at our relationship with technology.
It really does. Grassin's core argument is, well, it's compelling, but also quite challenging, I think. He basically says technology isn't just some external thing we use. No, it's woven right into the fabric of human existence.
Mhm.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack that central idea that tech doesn't just change our physical world, how we interact with stuff. It profoundly impacts our symbolic reality, how we make meaning, our culture, and even our ontological reality.
Technological reality.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's our deep down sense of what it even means to be human. So Grassin's saying tech is fundamentally reshaping the human condition itself. And that forces us really to ask some hard questions about which applications, which paths are genuinely desirable and why.
That's a big distinction, physical versus symbolic and ontological. So it's way beyond just, faster gadgets. It's about redefining human. Could you maybe elaborate a bit on that idea of technology being interwoven? How does he illustrate that connection right from the start?
Sure. He points to the 20th century, right? An explosion of tech progress, unlimited proliferation, he calls it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just about making life easier. Grassin argues it actually shattered and broke the anthropo-existential in man.
The anthropo-existential.
Yeah, basically our core human experience, our fundamental way of being here. He's saying technology didn't just give us more power, it fundamentally changed our inner world, our sense of self.
Okay, so not just like a hammer extending your arm. It's something more invasive, something that redefines what we can even think about ourselves.
Exactly. The study says modern tech isn't just an instrument that extends power or a tool for transforming nature. That's too simple. Grassin sees it more as the special organ for reshaping nature as such and reshaping the human condition.
The special organ. Wow.
Yeah, think of it less like a device we pick up and more like, well, almost part of our evolution now, integrated. And this, he says, causes both huge anxiety and excitement. We end up feeling lost, torn between astonishment at its benefits and terror at its pitfalls, constantly grappling.
That feeling of being torn,
Yeah.
resonates, astonishment and terror. And he describes this transformation as having a dual nature, right? On one hand, it's this actual affirmation of almost total power over nature. We feel like we can control everything. But the other side, it reshapes fundamental anthropological elements that seemed untouched, fixed, eternal, like time, space, symbols, language. That second part feels unsettling. How are those eternal things being changed?
Well, think about it. How we perceive time and space. Digital communication just compresses them, right? How we use symbols. Emojis are reshaping that. Language itself. Algorithms are influencing what we see, what we say. Grassin insists these aren't just little tweaks. He says the contemporary situation forces one into a new universe. It's challenging the prior indetermination of what we are or believe we are.
So we're being forced to question things about ourselves we just took for granted before.
Precisely. It's a significant shock, like he says, not just to us as individuals, but to thought itself. It forces us to rethink all our old mental maps, the frameworks we use to understand everything.
A philosophical earthquake, kind of.
It really is, yeah. It's about how deep technology gets into our understanding, not just of the world, but us in the world. It's not just faster communication. It's how that speed redefines, say, patience or intimacy. It's not just virtual reality. It's how that changes our sense of physical community. These shifts are foundational, Grassin argues. They're disorienting.
When we talk about tech, people often feel like they have to pick a side. You're either for it, the optimist, or against it, the pessimist, warning everyone. But Grassin says there's no room to choose a team and join it. We just live and benefit from the age of technology with the same speed, often forgetting the small downsides because, well, profit and risk dominate. It's like we're all swept up in it.
Exactly. And you hear people say, oh, technology isn't the problem. It's how we use it. And while there's some truth there, Grassin thinks that view can actually stop us from seeing technology's constitutive anthropological dimension.
Constitutive, meaning it actually helps make us who we are.
Yes. By seeing it just as a neutral tool, we miss how it actively shapes us. He flat out says that escaping technology and demonizing it leads to an objectively impossible living. You'd have to withdraw completely. For Grassin, tech isn't optional. He calls it an essential human fact, like birth, death, language. It's fundamental now, part of our fabric.
An essential human fact. That's strong. He even says something really provocative like, humanity's best friend isn't the dog, but technology. He sees it as this turbulent mix that one must constantly negotiate and embrace. And he brings in the philosopher Sloterdijk, right? His idea of domestication de la dette, how humanization itself is tied to tech. Can you unpack that Sloterdijk point?
Sure. Sloterdijk, as Grassin reads him, argues that technology basically allows for doing something else in a different way. It transforms nature's limits into a possibility of freedom. The key idea is that only humans, using tools, developing tech, they realize the possibility of changing reality, of making holes in the cage of the environment.
Making holes in the cage. I like that.
And this change, Grassin says, bears the name of freedom. Our ability to reshape our world, to go beyond natural limits, that's intrinsically linked to our concept of freedom.
So it's not just about survival, building shelters or whatever. It's the act of shaping nature, physis, he calls it, and shaping ourselves in the process. Nature stops being this sort of sacred, untouchable land and becomes an object for conquest and control. But if it gives us this huge freedom, this power, what's the downside? What's the burden that comes with it?
That's the core tension. Grassin highlights the disturbing situation, where the human, now technologically powerful, must decide everything, even his own nature, and embrace his freedom to the end. When we desacralize nature, make it manipulable, it does reinforce the value of freedom, because anything seems possible. But at the same time, it puts this immense weight of responsibility on us. Every choice, every intervention, every creation, it's on us now. And this drive, he notes, isn't new. It manifests since the technological movement, since the first human movement. It's always been there. But modern tech just amplifies it incredibly.
And things like biotechnology, they're the ultimate example of this, aren't they? Controlling and synthesizing genetic code, artificial. Creation, artificial reproduction. Grassin says these things express this human condition that has finally been clarified. It shows our deep drive to shape life itself, even our own.
Absolutely. Manipulating the building blocks of life, that really brings this human condition into sharp focus. But, and this is crucial, while using tech on living things might seem natural or inherent to us now, the study is careful. It adds, this does not mean that any application of technology is desirable.
Right. Just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Exactly. It's not a blank check. The path has to be one worthy of humanity, open to this making and controlling, yes, but guided by ethics. The capability doesn't automatically grant desirability.
That's such a critical point. Capability versus desirability. So if tech reveals this deep human drive for power and control, what does Grassin say about how it affects our push for self-mastery?
Well, he argues that the sheer expanded and unlimited capacity of modern technology doesn't just enable our desires, it actually reveals to man this deeply rooted inclination for power, control, and self-mastery. More than that, it acts as a catalyst, accelerating this tendency of the self and this self-centeredness for the self. It sort of feeds a loop.
A loop. How so?
The more we control externally, the more we seem to seek control internally, often kind of focused just on the self. Sloterdijk, again, he defines modernity as the project of self-experimentation. The self is always trying to preserve itself and experiment, always thinking in the horizon of a project of self-empowerment. So technology becomes this ontological project. Being itself is only realized on the condition that one acts, decides, and controls. Action and control become fundamental to existing.
Okay, and here's where it got really interesting for me. Grassin says the dream of, like, a human-centered, humanistic technology that serves everyone, that dream fades. It fades because contemporary liberal subjectivity, basically the individual self, is seen more and more as the sole telos, the only real goal. So the big vision shrinks, and the world ends up serving whoever has the power to control the tech, not humanity as a whole.
That's the argument. This self-absorption, the individual as the ultimate goal, combined with what another thinker, Hautois, calls technological undifferentiation towards man.
Undifferentiation, meaning tech just sees humans as another thing to optimize.
Exactly. No special status limiting its application. These two things mark the decisive inversion of contemporary modernity. The study calls modern ethics a kinetic utopia. It's all about movement, the capacity for movement, choosing movement just for movement's sake, with no other real goal. And this leads to what Grassin terms the time of the endless end, a history that's just endless action and making without a final destination.
Movement for movement's sake. That is a stark image. And he calls it truly frightening because it divides society, right? Into the haves and have-nots, the adaptable and unadapted winners and losers, based on who can keep up with this constant motion.
Precisely. It creates this relentless pressure to adapt, upgrade, stay in motion. If you can't or won't keep pace, you risk getting left behind, not just economically, but culturally, socially. It's a society valuing constant progress and self-optimization above almost everything else.
So if the hero of this modern age is the engineer and entrepreneur, not the priest, politician, parent, or anyone seen as a messenger with meaning, what does that do to human connection, to our sense of purpose?
Well, Sloterdijk, again referenced in the study, portrays the modern person as a kind of messenger without a message. Someone who's lost the function of mediation with others, the past, history, and the future. It highlights this deep tension, this duality. On one side, the will to be truly human, which involves relationships, connection, the challenge of the other, and on the other side, the will to turn even relationships into objects, things to be made efficient, useful, controlled. We're caught between authenticity and instrumentalization.
Messengers without messages. Wow. So in this world obsessed with tech efficiency, what does Grassin see as the real enemy to our humanity?
He gives a pretty stark warning. The real enemy, he says, is the dark and disturbing idea that technology allows for avoiding human language, or that it can replace it. And his conclusion is blunt. When language stops, the human disappears.
Oh, when language stops, the human disappears. That's intense. But why is language so fundamental? Couldn't you argue tech is just creating new ways to communicate?
Grassin's point is that technology's sheer power of imposition and its practical effectiveness are so strong that they tend to drive away speech. They push nuanced conversation aside, maybe relegate it to trivial discussion. Think about it. When a complex ethical problem gets reduced to clicking a button or following an algorithm, the space for deep, thoughtful, ethical talk shrinks. The risk isn't that words vanish entirely, but that language itself disappears through substitution and replacement, or becomes just a way to make technological use practical socially and culturally. Its deeper meaning-making ethical function gets eroded.
It sounds like he's describing how we're encouraged to just sort of swallow the pill.
Yeah.
Make any text seem appropriate, legitimate, essential, desirable, all serving self-affirmation and power. And this gets reinforced by best practices and procedures that make it all seem acceptable, maybe framed in terms of human interest, but really just making the tech application total practical, while potentially ignoring the linguistic, the ethical side.
That's exactly the concern. It bypasses critical thinking for adoption. So the really deep ethical question today isn't just, what can we do? It's, does a world of discourse without words still remain a fully human world? The danger isn't technology itself, he stresses. It's the risk that it could lead to a history without words and thus a history without humans. He points to medicine, actually, as a field that really felt this. Tech's power sometimes overshadowed the patient's voice. That's partly why bioethics emerged, patients demanding to be heard, to tell their story. Even in corporations, he suggests, there's this growing sense of needing something more, a spiritual complement maybe, beyond just pure function, a recognition that people need more than just being the armed arm of a purely practical concern.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive. It's clear Grassin's work really pushes us beyond just looking at the surface of tech. He shifts the fundamental question we should be asking, doesn't he?
He absolutely does. This study doesn't end asking, where are we with technology? It ends asking, where are we with words? That's a huge shift in focus. It reminds us that the human element in man is linked to the affirmation of an irreducible ethical part of man. And that part, it's tied directly to language, to real connection.
So think about that for a second. Technology gives us this incredible freedom, maybe even ultimate freedom, to shape our world, shape ourselves. But what if the cost is the very language that defines our humanity, that allows for ethics, for real connection? What kind of world are we actually building then?
Yeah, here's a final thought maybe for you to chew on. In this age where we can do almost anything technologically, how do we actively make sure that our innovations actually deepen, not diminish, the richness, the necessity, the ethical power of human conversation? How do we stop a history without words from becoming our future?
Lots to think about there. Keep those thoughts churning. We'll catch you next time for another deep dive into the ideas shaping our world.